First sport to make an official announcement of where they will go following the pandemic is the NHL. NHL has announced that if and when the season returns, it will go straight to the playoffs. The brackets and seeding are set, and it will follow strict guidelines, which I will go over in this video. Vince McMahon says he is officially done with the XFL. I didn't think they were going to have a massive run their second time around, but I also didn't think it was going to end after 7 or 8 games. But again, here we are in the middle of a deadly virus that's reshaping the world. Damian Lillard says that he will not play the rest of the NBA season if the NBA does not give the Portland Trailblazers a fair chance to make the playoffs. And he basically means that if they go straight to the playoffs, or they say they're going to play 5 games as exhibition games that have no impact on anything. I'm going to go over all 3 of these topics, thoughts, and opinions. Like, subscribe, push it out there. Thank you, as always. If there is anything, and I mean anything, that we are all craving, it is professional sports, or not even just so much professional sports, but progress that is going to lead us back to professional sports. The NHL is the first of the 4 major sports to make an announcement in regards to the coronavirus. Damian Lillard would be very frustrated if the Blazers did not have a playoff shot. And Vince McMahon says in court filing that he will not buy the XFL back for a 3rd time. We're going to talk about all 3 of these topics here. I highly urge everybody to like, subscribe, push the video out. We do a lot of different things. We talk about sports. We talk about wrestling. We have some gaming. We haven't done too much with gaming yet, but we're going to kind of branch that out more again. In the future, we're trying to get better quality things. Microphone. I'm thinking about getting an audio Blue Yeti mic soon. That's one of the things that we're looking at. And again, just different things like that that's going to just boost the quality and make it a more enjoyable listening experience for everybody that listens to this. But the first thing we're going to talk about is probably the NHL, because it's the big story of the day. The NHL has announced a plan to return their season. Now, what I mean by this is the NHL has confirmed they're going straight to the playoffs, which means that they are not going to obviously have any more regular games. But just like any other sport, one of my things concerned with this is a lot of these guys haven't maybe been practicing and staying in shape the way that they would like to. Again, that's one of those things that is the NBA. Some of these guys are talking about the NBA going straight to playoffs. Some of these guys haven't even touched a basketball in 2 months. Now, I highly doubt that, because when you're a professional athlete, you find some way to stay in shape. And clearly just the conditioning and all that type of shape, because I just think, a lot of these guys, they do all of these things, but for them to go straight into the playoffs with any sport, it's definitely a risky thing. Because you got to keep in mind, with a lot of sports, you're constantly on the road, you're constantly doing this and that, and you're into it, you're moving. But once you stop and then get back into it, it's rust. That's what it is, especially the athletes that are playing at this level. But let's talk about this. The NHL says they will go straight to the playoffs. Commissioner Gary Bettman and the NHL Players Association agreed to terms on resuming the season with a 24-team playoff format that would yield a champion in early autumn. More than 2.5 months ago, talks about the virus, the commissioner announced on Tuesday the 24 teams will return, if and when medically cleared, for a unique playoff tournament in 2 hub cities. Official training camps will resume no earlier than July 1st, and the season will conclude with the presentation of the Stanley Cup in the early autumn. The regular season was officially declared complete. We remain focused on the safety of our players, coaches, support staff, and arena personnel. Bettman said, we will not set dates, choose sites, or begin to play until we know it is appropriate and prudent, and we are approved to do so. They also issued on Monday that detailed testing and safety protocols for what it terms Phase 2 voluntary practices at team facilities that would begin in early June if local shutdown ordinances have been lifted. Now, the NHL is also saying that they're going to be playing in select cities. They're not going to be traveling to every arena and different things like that. Obviously, I went over this earlier in the month when I talked about the NBA and the way that they were going to resume their regular season. The NHL has to be the same exact way. They got to be careful with it. They said that they would not start preseason or any type of training until July, meaning that if they're going straight to the playoffs, you got to figure, let's say the playoffs or the regular season resumed in the NHL in August. I know that sounds like a terrible ways away. Let's say it resumed just out of curiosity. Let's say it resumed in August. The season's already complete. Playoffs in hockey run a little bit. September. And, by early October, you would think you would have your champion. But now, what does that mean for next hockey season? That's one of those things. Is it going to start in January? Because I know hockey has a very short gap between, if you play a full hockey season and you win the Stanley Cup, your gap from from winning the Stanley Cup to training is very short. Football has a long off season, rightfully so. But again, at the same time, hockey is the same. I think hockey's harder than football because, again, you're doing this multiple times a week. There's a lot of strain. And again, I haven't played either, so I can't really say too much from a player standpoint. But it's a lot harder from the standpoint of having to do it more. The NHL offseason is short. They said that this is what they're going to do. So all the teams that didn't make the playoffs, they're a little bit, frustrated, and I can understand that. But it says here the hub cities, one hosting the Eastern Conference and one on the Western Conference, will be chosen from a list that includes Chicago, Columbus, Ohio, Dallas, Edmonton, Alberta, Las Vegas, Los Angeles, Minneapolis, St. Paul, or Minneapolis-St. Paul is one place, Pittsburgh, Vancouver, and Toronto. Bettman did not say whether fans will be allowed to attend the games, which would be broadcast on television. Depending on how soon the NHL comes back, as far as their term to have fans would be unlikely. The sooner the NHL comes back, the less likely it is that there's going to be fans in attendance. Out of all these cities, a lot of these cities are kind of populated. I'm not sure. I don't really see Vegas. I don't see Los Angeles. I don't see Chicago. I can't speak for Dallas and Pittsburgh, but a lot of these, in Toronto especially, I think Toronto, I don't know what their mayor was doing, but he was very strict on resuming of professional sports in Toronto. So again, this is kind of one of those things where you don't really know exactly where they're going with it. And Bettman said the teams would be allowed to bring back 50 employees, including players, coaches, and medical staff, and club officials, all of them who've been tested for the coronavirus throughout the process. Players' union said agree with the league on the announced plans. There could be changes before play is resumed. Financial matters will be addressed, so on and so forth. When hockey resumes, the playoff will follow the format last week by NHL Players Association, expanding the field to 24 teams from 16. So one of the things that you got to give credit to the NHL for doing is that they're expanding their playoffs. So it's giving teams that didn't really have a chance to make it or needed those last games at the end of the season a bigger chance. Now, as far as the format goes, the top 4 teams, and this is the last part of the topic, the top 4 teams in each conference will receive a first-round bye. They are the Boston Bruins, Tampa Bay Lightning, the Washington Capitals, and the Philadelphia Flyers. Those top 4 teams will play in a series. And the Blues. The Avalanche, the Knights, and the Stars. I'm sorry. That was a whole different conference. During the first round, those teams will play a conference-based round robin, 3 games each, to determine their seedings, 1 through 4. The remaining 16 teams will commence best-of-5 series to determine which 8 of them will advance to the second round. Bettman said the league and the players' union had not decided whether the second round would be best-of-5 or best-of-7. And they're still working on the conference and Stanley Cup Finals will be best-of-7 as usual, and will most likely be played in 2 hub cities. 7 teams did not qualify. The Devils, Sabres, your team didn't qualify. Their seasons ended immediately, and they will be entered with the draft lottery among the 8 teams that lose in the first round. So, it's good. It's good to see some progress the NHL of all places is making, and you want to see stuff like that. As far as certain teams, it provides new life because it extends it, but again, it's an unfortunate circumstance for any professional sports fan and player, coach, staff, whatever. But it's we're gonna see how this goes. But hockey, they are set on that, and it's good to see some type of progress and decision made going forward. Vince McMahon says in court filing that he will not buy the XFL back, and that does not surprise me whatsoever. If there's anybody that's struggling with this coronavirus, maybe not personally, but business-wise, is Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon's illegitimate stepson is the WWE, so he will always choose the WWE first. Between that, the XFL was brought back last year. They played a couple of games. The virus kind of swept them off, and he realized that he was not going to be able to continue, and he declared bankruptcy for it. Again, especially with the situation with him releasing a lot of WWE talent and all those kind of things, Vince McMahon says in court that he won't try to buy back the XFL. And you know what? It's unfortunate the way it went out, but this is also the second time that the XFL has failed. So that's one of those things that you actually have to keep in mind also. The XFL filed for bankruptcy on April 13th, 3 days after laying off nearly its entire staff, citing the unforeseen impact of the coronavirus pandemic. McMahon then put the league up for sale, but the court's committee of unsecured creditors claimed last week that McMahon had set up a fire sale bidding process that would rig the process in a way that would allow him to buy back the XFL without repaying its debts. In a deposition footnoted, McMahon said he had reserved his legal right to be a bidder in the original bankruptcy claim. He said he did that because he think he was trying to make up his mind. I don't know what's out there making me out to be a bad guy, that I'm going to buy the XFL back for pennies on the dollar. That helped me move into the direction. I'm not going to be a bidder. I'm not going to have anything to do with that. I hope that someone will pay a lot of money for it, and I do hope that it will survive. Vince McMahon obviously wants to see the XFL succeed, but I don't think that if it does, it's going to be in Vince McMahon. I think Vince McMahon is completely done with the XFL. I don't see it coming back. You know, the first time it bankrupted, okay, came back again, looking good. The virus really swept it. Had the virus not come through and swept it, I think the XFL would still be going on. Did I watch a lot of the XFL? Not really. There's different guys here that he's working with, potential purchasers for the XFL. I don't believe there's a robust market for the assets, potentially interested private equity firms, yada, 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 all those things like that. According to the original schedule it established, letters of intent are due June 12th, final bids are due July 6th, subject to approval by the bankruptcy court, in hopes of putting potential new owners in position to get the XFL back on field in spring 2021, if desired. So that's one of the things that people are kind of not really thinking about. The XFL is done right now. Vince McMahon's done with the XFL. The XFL might not be done. Do I think the XFL comes back eventually? I don't know. I do not think Vince McMahon will have anything to do with the XFL from this point going forward. I think that he is personally done with it. He doesn't want nothing to do with it. He has his own problem with WWE. The virus screwed him up. He has a massive company that WWE has to run on top of XFL. He's done with the XFL, and I always said, it's too much to begin with. So he needs to stay with the WWE, and that's what I think. I thought, again, the amount of work that Vince McMahon, you can say what you want about how the television sucks, but the amount of work that he puts in to make his company what it is really admirable. And not only that, to try to do another company, he had no choice but to file for bankruptcy. The first thing he did was file for bankruptcy, then he started releasing talent. It was just a giant cluster that screwed Vince McMahon every way from Sunday. So it does not surprise me whatsoever. But again, maybe the XFL comes back. Hopefully it does. All the guys, all the hungry talent, football players that were really out there trying to just make a name for themselves, hopefully they have a chance to go with that forward. But that's all I got on that. Final topic. Damian Lillard doesn't plan to participate in resumed NBA season if the Blazers don't have true opportunity to make playoffs. Now, I haven't heard anything from any NHL players about the season ending immediately. But here it goes. If the NBA resumes the 2019 season by electing to play a handful of games with all the teams just to reach 70 games, the television deals are 70 games, so the NBA would try to just reach that. Damian Lillard knows his next move. And I quote, "If we come back and they're just like, we're adding a few games to finish the regular season and they're throwing us out there for meaningless games and we don't have a true opportunity to get into the playoffs, I'm going to be with my team because I'm part of the team, but I'm not going to be participating. I'm telling you that right now." And you could put that in there. He also states Portland right now currently is 29-37. Now the reason that, there's a lot of teams that are already well out of the playoff equation in the NBA standings, but one of the things that I feel for is because not only is Damian Lillard and the Trailblazers a team that I think should be a lot better than they are, they're also right on the outside. So this is not a 12th or 13th seed team that is telling you, well, we don't have a chance. The Knicks don't have a chance. The Knicks were done. Their season was over in December. Portland, though, is in the number 9 spot, 3.5 games behind the Grizzlies. So you got to figure I can definitely understand where he's coming from, because if Portland goes back, or not Portland, I'm sorry, if the season's back in its 5 games and the Blazers are 1 game out of the Grizzlies when there was supposed to be another 12 games, I understand what he's saying. It's one thing if they play a full season and you're 1 game short of the playoffs, well, that's on you. But, he also has to realize that, none of this was planned. The NBA doesn't want to play 70. Do you think the NBA wants to be in this situation? And that's what I think he's not understanding, is that, yes, it's crappy. It is. The NBA doesn't want this situation. The players don't want this situation. The coaches, the owners, nobody wants this situation. But it is what it is. You know what I mean? But I definitely do understand his frustration. You know, you got to understand both sides of it. At some point in late July, the league anticipates restarting the season at some point in late July at ESPN Worldwide Sports at Walt Disney. The season was suspended. Yeah, this goes to tell you how it happened. There are a number of options. Will there be a postseason play-in tournament? Does the league go right into the playoffs? Does it attempt a numbers 1 through 16 playoff format? If we come back and we don't have an opportunity to make the playoffs, I will show up to work. I will be at practice. I'll be with my team. I'm going to do all that. But I'm going to be sitting right on the bench during the games. Can't say I disagree with him. But at the same time, you know, it's difficult. It's a difficult situation. That's really all the news I got for you guys today. But again, you know, you got to understand Damian Lillard a little bit. The guy wants a chance to make the playoffs. But, you know, it's just the virus screwed up everything. And I can't say I disagree with him. I really can't. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. As always, stay safe.